You're watching PEGRI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
The wheel is turning and you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back.
Hello and welcome back to my Wheelhouse after a week absence. For a holiday. We're back, I think 3 weeks or so away from the start of training camp for the NBA. We had our first Sunday of NFL football back, a lot of excitement around that. Patriots get their first W there, we're looking good.
Yeah.
A lot of other interesting, lots of injuries as usual in the NBA, NFL opener, so hopefully that continues to bring excitement.
Too much NFL.
Too much NFL.
My God, the whole sports page is like a 27 pages.
Well, I mean, it still owns,
the
still
NFL
owns
is actually
it.
going down in popularity.
Yeah, it is.
It's still the most popular by so much.
Yeah,
It's
by
crazy,
dramatic.
but we got the right sport.
Yeah, eventually it'll be a while. It'll be a couple of years.
Rising and you know, it was I was August the 30th last year is when they completed the Kyrie Irving trade.
Yes, yesterday.
And we're looking at how at a dead time it's been in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Last year was so much different than
Right.
this, huh?
Yeah,
Because,
this year's version of the Kyrie Irving trade is a lot less dramatic.
Yeah, this year was so hot. Everything that was happening here now is really low. What's going on? But I'm refreshed.
There could be some sparks coming in the next couple of weeks before training camp. We'll see.
You never know if that happened on August. If that was completed on August 30th,
That's right.
it's still possible.
That's
right.
right. Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. Today we're going to focus on the Hall of Fame. These four guys that we're going to talk about and touch on today, among others, obviously, were inducted on this weekend, and they gave their speeches and very heartfelt.
I went to the Hall of Fame once with Dan and Matt a long time ago, and it was when I was looking at
the induction. You mean
the induction,
right?
Yeah. And what was different was when we sat at tables and had a meal. And so that we sat at a round table with some other people from colleges and stuff like that. And one thing I remember clearly, that I'm not sure Dan and Matt remember as clearly, is that the table about 2 tables from us had Will Chamberlain sitting at it. You look at all the guys that are there, when you look in the audience, right, that it's just who's who on basketball. It's amazing who's there. And Matt was able to got up from it. He was young. He got up, he went over, and he went up to Will Chamberlain. And I think it was the only other autograph Will Chamberlain signed. But it was much different. Now you see it's like in an auditorium, right? Right. Where everybody's sitting like that. We were at tables.
It's much more of like a award ceremony than necessarily. You're trying to make it sound like a sit-down dinner almost.
More of a social event.
Yeah. I mean, you still have prime players going, current players now, already Hall of Fame inductees are all there. It's a good celebration of these players' careers, and they do a good job of encapsulating each aspect that are inducted. They have the coaches and they have the contributors. We see Doris Burke and stuff like that.
A watered down thing.
Yes.
You said that before.
It is.
As opposed to the other Hall of Fames. Is that what you're thinking? Or
yeah, it's more watered down than the others.
Yeah, but I really like we'll get to it and talk about it, but I like bringing somebody like Lefty Driesell in, who I follow real close, and you get to talk the old times, and you see how the players in the audience, how much they're picking up on what this guy's talking about and the history of the game. You know,
that is something where I think that the Hall of Fame continues to have a state significance, is how strong it carries through in terms of the historical culture of the league. And they do a very good job at highlighting and respecting each individual era and making sure that the proper due is given to the right people and right contributors from each era. And instead of now, maybe in terms of how media perceives it, they might be highlighting the wrong aspects of it too much. And I mean, I fall victim of that as well. But the Hall of Fame does a good job in giving respect where it's due and stuff like that.
One factor, I think, is that everybody's still alive. The generations are still alive, so you can still go back. Bill Russell's still alive.
Right,
you know?
he goes.
So, I mean, there's a little bit before him, but sooner or later, as in
start to
baseball,
wane out.
Ty Cobb, you don't really talk, that's kind of too far ago. You know, Babe Ruth is too far ago.
All right, let's get to it. We're going to start with the WNBA Finals. It's going to be quick. We got the Washington Mystics versus the Seattle Storm. So
it's a good matchup.
It's a okay matchup. I'm disappointed because where the WNBA is at its peak is when the Minnesota Lynx and the Sparks had this rivalry built where they were going back-to-back in the finals several years in a back-to-back, and we saw Candace Parker, one of the biggest stars in the league, going up against the heavy hitters. And I thought that in terms of what the overall buzz is around the series, in terms of the playoffs overall, it seemed that it peaked in the semifinals between the Storm and the Mercury, where Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner, and there was more stars.
You're probably right.
I mean, and now you still have
still a decent
Deladon with the Mystics is just a strong player, obviously, and we have the league's MVP, Breanna Stewart, and one of the greatest players in WNBA history, Sue Bird, with the Storm. But it looks like it's going to be underwhelming. I wouldn't be surprised if the Storm swept. They're up 2-0. Are they going to sweep?
Yeah.
I think they're going to sweep. I don't have much else to say about that. I mean, I just wanted to touch on it.
No, I think I had a 30-second reunion of my last team that I coached while we were out. Was a championship team, and we got back together. And a couple of them can't watch the women's NBA. They think they don't like it. They don't think it's progressed enough. But they want to watch the men's play. And I know that sounds a little sexist, but I'm not sure how far that game has come. No. Europe still plays a big part, and everything's in terms of they make 5 times as much when they play in Europe.
You still see players. Okay, so where do you land on that? Because obviously that's been a very prevalent discussion in the media in the past month or so. Is in terms of a lot of players, most notably Skylar Diggins, are really rallying for WNBA players, for women in the WNBA, to get paid more. And that's kind of more. They're getting improperly pinholed to want to paid what the NBA players are getting paid, but that's not necessarily what they're going for. They want to get paid a greater percentage of the overall revenue of the league, because the NBA, it's a 50-50 split in terms of what the players make and what the league makes. With the WNBA, it's more of 20% or so. It's not as public numbers as the NBA is, but I think where the argument may fall a little short is both the NBA and the WNBA have fixed costs that go into payment of a league. You're talking venue fees, you're talking random equipment fees, you're talking payment of trainers and referees and of staff for changeover crews and stuff like that. All stuff that needs to be paid no matter what, and isn't really negotiable in terms of, like, in a CBA, it's kind of just like you got to pay this for the product to be put out on the floor. And where the NBA is bringing in a lot of money, and that aspect of their payment, like what the breakdown is, it doesn't seem as drastic, but because proportionately the WNBA is making less money, that aspect takes up a larger sum of their money, so there's less money to pay out to the players. I understand what they're saying.
Yeah, I do too. But I mean, you just you just touched on it a little bit. The difference between revenue is just
dramatic. It's dramatic.
It's like, General Motors and I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean,
my garage
TV and all of that. So without that being a balance there, I'm not sure how much the league can actually pay those players.
Right.
But they do have a problem, because Diana Taurasi was actually sitting out WNBA seasons to play in Europe for $1 million a year.
I think they're still going to do that.
And they're still going to do that because, and I don't think that they can balance that. And there's probably a need for them to do that. But I can't see where that league is. I don't think I'm wrong. I mean, they can't be making that much enough money to pay these players.
We're seeing media that is backing the WNBA, trying to rally attention and eyeballs overall to the league, and are really talking up the level of play. And we're seeing more and more interviews with people that are prevalent in the NBA circles, with coaches and with commentators and with players in the WNBA, with the hope to bring in new juice to the WNBA, with the aspirations that maybe down the road will trickle into more money funneling into the sport. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to make a big enough ripple where they will be able to get paid more. Whether or not they deserve it or not, I do think that they should get paid more, but I don't think that they can, is the point. I mean, I agree with them. They should get paid more. Proportionately, it's sad that they make only 15 to 20%, but they can't get more.
Own without the NBA,
right?
They would go bust.
Yes, absolutely.
And they have before this. So they're tied to the NBA, and they're dependent on the NBA for their existence. And I think it's great that there's a WNBA that now has kind of established itself, and it's there. But realistically,
where I do see it gaining traction, and I don't know how that they can capture this and capitalize on it, but an avenue where hopefully they could look to in the future is social media, in terms of how the game is consumed. With the NBA, it's obviously a highlight-driven sport, but it's prevalent enough where you can watch a full game and you'll still enjoy it. With the WNBA, where it struggles is the game is still slower. There's less talent top to bottom, but it's below the rim, so inside the three-point arc. The ball handling is obviously less prevalent, but there are still highlights. I mean, we saw Diana Taurasi get hot, hit 5 straight threes, and lose her mind. But the way that you capture that is you turn it into a minute highlight clip, and somehow you got to try to advertise that online. I don't know how they monetize that in terms of how, be able to flip it back over into revenue for the league, but that's how I'm consuming the league in a way that I wasn't 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I am appreciating that aspect where formerly I wasn't even looking for it. Now I'm seeing these Sue Bird clips where she scores 14 straight points in the fourth quarter, and I'm enjoying those, but I still would never watch a full game. No offense to the games,
I
but
thought
the
it was
gameplay isn't
telling.
enough.
I'm there with 12 of my women's players who played at the full scholarship Division II level and are really vested in the game of basketball, and only one of them watches the WNBA.
Right. Yeah.
If they're not going to be watching it, who's going to be watching it?
Right. I mean, you just need to hope that there's more and more star players that can drive it with their individual performance.
It's a family event. It's
Yes.
attracting that element a little bit, but it's.
I think it's a little overstated with how much
Yes.
it matters by the media is really trying to push it more than it actually matters. All right, we're going to touch, before we get to the Hall of Fame, we got the Phoenix Suns and the Houston Rockets did a little swapsies, semi-irrelevant, but I think something
very
we need to
interesting.
pay.
We're talking about Kyrie Irving and Isaiah Thomas
Yes,
last year. This year we're talking about
this
Ryan
year's
Anderson
version.
and
All right, so the Houston
Brandon
Rockets
Knight.
got off of the albatross contracts of Ryan Anderson. They sent Ryan Anderson, pairing him with the 46th overall draft pick in this year's draft, DeAnthony Melton, who showed out in summer league.
And he's point guard, right?
He's a swing guard,
okay.
a swing guard. He can play one, but I think his position
Well, on that team, Phoenix, I'm wondering whether he's.
his position probably will shake out to be more of a 2 than a 1, but he can play both. And then in return, they landed estranged kind of knucklehead big man Marquise Chris, who has athleticism and explosiveness, but not much else. And oft injured Brandon Knight, who has a big contract as well, but
Coming off the ACL.
coming off a big injury, who was projected to be the starting point guard for Phoenix, but obviously
Not
now
by you.
That's well, yes, he was. You're missing the fact. You can't get over it.
I won't.
So Ryan Anderson was the big contract in the deal. The part that was interesting was he agreed to depreciate his contract by, I think it was like $4 million or so. So
it's a $40 million contract over 2 years. What'd he do?
He's taking $4 million less for the first year.
All
So
right.
instead of like
20, he's gonna
instead
pay
of like
16.
21, it's going to be like 17 or
17.
something like that. Which
For somebody that wasn't playing at
which
all.
gives Phoenix a little bit more wiggle room. I like the move for both teams.
He might start.
I like the move for both teams. Well, that's what Adrian Wojnarowski stated on his press release of the deal, is that Ryan Anderson would come in as a titled starter. I think more likely than not, he's going to get a Keith Bogans type of a situation where he's going to start, play 5 minutes, come off the bench, come out, sit on the bench for the majority of the rest of the game, maybe only play 15 to 20 minutes for the entire game, because I do think that their attention is still focused on the development of the younger players, and while they do want to push for as many wins as possible, because I think that winning, just the overall feeling of winning is important for this team, I do think that they understand that the hopeful development of a Dragon Bender, even though I think he's a lost cause, and the continued development of their young swings playing up a position and being able to be more versatile is more important than pleasing Ryan Anderson. So I like it for both teams. I think Marquise Chris has a chance to fit in great as just a small microcosm of what Capella offers on the second unit. I don't know what Brandon Knight's going to offer. He's probably going to be pretty irrelevant. I think that he's a good buyout candidate by the end of the year. I like
Who's Houston's backup?
Eric Gordon. He usually plays the back.
He's not a good point guard.
If you think about it, a lot of the time, the first sub out is Chris Paul when they do the first
And
unit, and then they keep Harden in, and he shifts down to the point guard.
So,
when the bench unit comes in, they bring in both Chris Paul and Eric Gordon with the bench unit, and they kind of alternate point guard duties. So I see him maybe getting 10 minutes a game. I think that the star of the trade for Phoenix is Melton, and the star of the trade for Houston is Marquise Chris. And I think that it's obvious a lot of the lashback for Phoenix has been, okay, you traded away the only minutes you had at point guard for a player you could have drafted at 31 anyway, and you traded away another young big and for an albatross contract in Ryan Anderson. But what I see a player that they probably had Elia Kobo in their top 20, the guy that they got at 31, and they probably had DeAnthony Melton in their top 20. And I bet you they still like Kobo more than Melton, but they said, hey, we got a chance to get a guy that we had in the first round anyway, and we thought it was absolutely worth that. I think that Melton profiles as a great player down the road to fit with Devin Booker, and I think that this, even though you might not like it, this move, unless another move happens soon, continues to bolster the idea that Booker will be playing more minutes at the point guard.
And don't get me wrong, I love Booker. Booker's one of my favorite guys in the league.
Yes.
I just think it hurts his game to be playing the point. I think he needs to be playing. He's got a position that he excels at.
Yeah.
It'd be like putting Klay Thompson at the point.
No, it isn't. It's so different. It's so different.
Similar to that. I mean, he's got a game that doesn't include playing the point, that is all-star level and maybe all-NBA level. And I love him for that. And I want him to play that game. And I think playing the point. The other thing about this whole thing is, well, obviously, I guess, is they become weaker defensively. And I know they got Ariza, but that's the worst defensive team in the league. And now Ryan Anderson can't play any defense.
I don't hate their defense.
Well, I hate their defense. I can't see. I mean, trying to keep it on topic. Booker is not going to play Kyrie Irving and Steph Curry and John Wall.
No, he's not. But
how is he going to do that and play point? How's he going to match up on the other end?
He's going to match up with the weaker defensive player, the weaker offensive player in the backcourt, and I think that.
And who is going to match up on John Wall? Who's going to be
Trevor Ariza or Mikal Bridges or Josh Jackson or
that's
Melton?
really odd to say Trevor Ariza is going to play John Wall and Kyrie Irving is.
But I'm saying they have.
I know they got to make do with what they got. It's the point.
They have a treasure chest of defensive wings that in slot
Mikal
minutes
Bridges,
that will fit in great. They have a rotation of 3 of them, and you can insert T.J. Warren here and there if they want a scoring punch. And
but he's not going to help them defensively.
No, he's not. But the point is that there's enough players that they can slot in 2 through 4 that they can still be dynamic on both ends of the floor if Booker needs to play minutes at the 1.
You touched on it also, and it's that and I've got a new definition of the word that I hated last year of tanking,
yes.
And I think it's done before the season starts. I told you that before, and I think that's what Phoenix is doing. I think they're looking ahead, and you kind of touched on it a little bit anyways, and they're looking past. They should be looking past this year, but I think they're throwing this year away.
I think that they're going to try to win as many games as they can, but they're
they're
self-aware that it's not going to be that many.
And I think that really hurts Ayton's development because
I don't think it is because I think Ayton's going to play 36 minutes a game.
But Ayton's expected to win games.
He's going to help win games.
Yeah.
But he's going to help win games. He's their best big man that they have in their team, and it's going to be interesting in terms of what chemistry that Booker and him can develop. I think that you continue to understate Booker's development as a playmaker in the offense. I think that this year you're going to see him take strides. He's not going to become an A-level playmaker, but he's going to be a B-level playmaker, especially with Igor's.
It's a default position. It's not they're doing it because they can't do anything else.
But it's fine, and there's still a move down the line. There's still backup point guards in other teams with big backcourt rotations that need to clear up room so that they can play minutes. We have the Clippers that have 5 guys that you could take any single one of those guys for the Phoenix Suns. Sure. They would love to have Patrick Beverly. They would love to have Avery Bradley. They would love to have Milos Teodosic.
The day I see that move, I'll feel different.
But don't you think that
they've had many opportunities up till now to sign point guards? There's been many point guards out there.
If you had to predict January is the starting point guard on Phoenix's roster right now in January. Right now, the roster is that starting point guard on Phoenix.
Kobo.
So you're saying yes. I'm saying no. I
don't know. I'm saying that you're asking me to guess who it's going to be. That's all I got.
I'm telling you that
it's not going to be Melton. It's not going to be Harrison.
I'm telling you that in January, the starting point guard isn't currently on Phoenix's roster.
Okay.
I'm telling you that they're going to land another player.
What I'm saying is they've had ample opportunity over the last 3 months to pick up that kind of a point guard numerous times.
I just think that they didn't want to take a swing at a free agent level option that they had available with them. They're looking to make an upgrade maybe in the trade market, and if they can't make it, that's fine. And maybe they will kick the can down the road with an Okobo at the point guard, with Booker playing 15 to 20 minutes at point guard, and try to get their feet wet in the 2019-2020 free agency. There's good point guards coming up in the free agency class. I was hoping that
team was going to be one of the
They're going to be exciting. They're still going to be good to watch.
They're not.
What does anything on Houston's side matter to you? Do you care at all?
No, I mean the $40 million dump. I guess that's about it.
It's positive.
Congratulations on dumping the $40 million.
Is it a win-win? Who won the trade?
I think Houston won the trade just by getting rid of Anderson.
I think it's a win-win. I like it for both.
And possibly Chris could be.
He could develop
a contributor.
Hopefully. I like it. I like Melton. All right, first Hall of Famer. We got Steve Nash, probably the most decorated of these 4 we have on the board. He played 17 seasons in the NBA. He played, I believe, the second most games out of the 4 players. He averaged a career 14, 3, and almost 9 assists a game. He played most prominently, obviously, for the Phoenix Suns, but he also played in the beginning of his career some time for Dallas with Dirk Nowitzki, and he ended his career pretty irrelevantly with the Los Angeles Lakers. He was very frequently the best player on his team. He was a 2 times MVP, infamously. I think that one was absolutely deserved.
Back-to-back
Yeah,
MVP.
one was absolutely deserved. The other, I thought that there was a lot of other players that were more deserving.
Kobe and Shaq are
but,
in the league at the same
but that's
time.
okay. They're still.
But back-to-back is impressive.
They're still. They're very heavily weighted, and those matter. Even no matter how legitimate or not they are. He was an 8-time All-Star. He was the assist champ 5 times. He was a 7-time All-NBA player. He's 3rd all-time in the NBA history in assists. He made the Western Conference Final 3 times. One time where the fiasco with Amare and I forget the other player stood up off the bench when there was a scuffle against the San Antonio Spurs. They got suspended. They were likely, if those guys didn't get suspended, they were likely to win that series and then go on and probably win the championship that year, but they didn't. So other than that, they perennially were in playoff discussion. And I think it's all because of Steve Nash. Obviously, he played with other good All-Stars, but that's really where D'Antoni's offense was birthed because of Steve Nash.
My favorite stat
Yes.
on Steve Nash is he's a 4-time member of the 50-40-90 club.
Yeah, it was like
Oh
his. It
my
was like his
God.
club. It was like his club.
You know, yeah, I mean that is pretty impressive, and you know that's pretty good performance on 90% of the free throw line, 40% for the 50% for the field.
Yes.
That's just not done.
On pretty large volume, he was one of the most efficient players that the NBA has ever seen.
I would say, well, when I'm reading it, and I agree, one of the most unselfish players of all time.
7 years, he averaged over 10 assists. 7 different years, he averaged over 10 assists a game.
And his vision on the court is exceptional, obviously, but he's just so unselfish. And I love the pass-first point guards, and I know things are changing in there, but one of the most unselfish players to ever play the game.
Yep. In 05 and 06, I believe that was his second MVP season. He averaged 19, 5, and 11 assists a game on that 50-40-90. One of the more interesting MVP seasons that the NBA has seen. If you go back and watch those games, he's very deserving, and those games are remarkable. The last game I went back and watched because of that Gilbert Arenas scandal that came out. I went back and watched the game that Gilbert Arenas was talking about, where Gilbert Arenas and Steve Nash play each other, and Steve Nash was easily the best player in the game, and he was absolutely remarkable.
He's just a cool player.
Yeah, he's great to go back
player.
and watch. I think that we're going to talk about the other guys. But I think that he's probably the most reputable out of the 4 if you have. And there's arguments for others.
I think
there's
Jason
arguments.
Kidd.
Yes, there's arguments for Jason Kidd, and that's what those are the top 2. Those are the top 2.
I agree with that.
All right, Grant Hill.
So we'll talk about the 2 other guys that are marginal, and we'll start talking with Hill.
Yeah, so Grant Hill played 17 seasons. The majority of them, I would say 13 of them, were marred by injury.
That's the problem.
He averaged a career, still very strong, career 16.7 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. He played 1,000 games, the least out of these 4 guys. He was a 7-time All-Star. He was a 5-time All-NBA. He was the Rookie of the Year, co-Rookie of the Year with Kidd. In 1999 and 2000, he averaged 26, 7, and 5. He's really regarded as like the pre-LeBron archetype in terms of play style, as a small forward who has point guard duties.
I think it's legit
to say
that that first 4 years they're talking about before the injuries, he was on his way to becoming Michael Jordan or LeBron James. That's the track he was on, and a lot of people consider it. And then the injuries just really took that game away, and he was not a Hall of Famer the last 13 years.
From 2000 to 2004, he played like something like 40 combined games. He played like something like 4 or 40.
And when I look at All-NBA selections, for a Hall of Famer, if it's not first team All-NBA, I don't want to hear it.
Right.
If you're an NBA, I'm looking at first team All-NBA, and he's got one of those.
Yeah.
He had one of those.
I think, semi-hot take, I think Grant Hill is dramatically overrated. I thought
you didn't agree with me on that.
I think that take where
he's such a nice guy.
He's really getting revered for those 4 seasons that he had before he got hurt with the Detroit Pistons, where, granted, he was an All-Star all 4 years, All-Star his rookie year. He was All-Star all 4 years. But if you actually look at his team was miserable. His usage rate was sky high. He was Otis Thorpe and 35-year-old Joe Dumars were the other good players on his team. And this guy was just forced and pigeonholed into a large role where he had to do everything, and that's why we saw his stats so inflated. But when you look on how it was reflected into winning, those 4 years, only 2 of them were playoff years, and both years he lost in a first-round exit, one of which was a sweep. I don't think that it's being properly reflected how maybe not transcendent his abilities were. Was he projecting to be better If he didn't get hurt, maybe, but people forget also that he came into the league older than most rookies do because of his time spent at Duke.
Yep.
I don't think that he was projected for another large jump in terms of his last year to the next year if he remained to stay healthy. I think he probably would have continued the same type of production, but I wasn't overly impressed. I went back and watched a couple games from '97. And a couple games in '98, and I really was underwhelmed in what I saw from Grant Hill. Was he a dynamic player? Yes. Was he a good scorer off the dribble? Yes. I think where the reputation maybe exceeds what he was he what in terms of that LeBron archetype, in terms of a creator for others, in terms of a do-it-all player. I think he's a little less of that than he gets the reputation for. Yep. And I think his scoring ability
could rebound and he could pass.
His scoring ability is more close to the basket than he is a three-level scorer. I thought that his creativity around the hoop is good. He was strong off the dribble, but he didn't have that great of a handle. I just think that each and every part of his game, when you're thinking about it, all you hear is, oh, if Grant Hill didn't get injured, he would be the next Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and I don't think
and
that's what people are saying. And after hearing you talk, I don't think I really buy that.
I don't think he
to
ever
say
would have.
He's on the Michael Jordan LeBron track. It's not really where he was.
I don't think he ever would have gotten there. I think he would have continued to be a good, solid all-star player surrounded if he was continued to be in a team that had bad supporting cast.
I don't think he's an all-star analyst either.
No, I don't like him as an analyst. So, I don't like his insight. But
he's a classy guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy, classy guy. Did you know that
his father's a Hall of Famer?
Did you know that he was the first ever Duke player to get inducted to the Hall of Fame? How weird is that?
Yeah, that's really
How
weird.
weird is that?
I did hear that.
Very weird.
I should have wrote that down because that is very, very strange.
But it could be interesting because moving forward, I guess it makes sense because in terms of what you're looking at with Duke University, in terms of when it rose to prominence, it was kind of right before him. When they started to really get a lot of reputation of winning, and Coach K coming onto the scene, and a lot of those other players are either right around Grant Hill's time or afterwards. So obviously we're going to see more.
Before that, it was Mike Jaminski and other guys that were decent players, but they were also Rands. They were never going to beat North Carolina.
Right. So we're going to see more Duke Hall of Famers moving forward, but it's just funny to think when you think about the reputation of Duke that they don't have any Hall of Famers yet. So out of these four guys, where does Grant Hill rank for you?
Last.
I have him last as well. I think that's interesting because I think he gets the reputation that he deserves to be higher, but I don't think he was. And he transitioned his career to be effective with Phoenix later on and be a strong role player, but I don't know if that matters so much. All right, let's touch on Ray Allen. Played 17 seasons in the NBA, most notably with the Milwaukee Bucks, Seattle Supersonics, and our Boston Celtics. He had a stint with the Miami Heat as well, a two-time champion with our Boston Celtics and with the Miami Heat. He played 1,300 games, career averages of 19, 4, and 3. He was a 10-time All-Star, and I think he only made All-NBA twice. He was now I think it's commonly understood that Steph Curry has the crown as best shooter ever, but I still think he deserves recognition in the top 5.
He still has the most threes.
Yes, he's still number one all time in threes.
Long.
He's in the top 30 for most points ever, and he had several good seasons where he was very reputable as a player. He averaged 27, 5, and 5. Right about in 06-07, before the season before he came to the Celtics. Earlier on in his career, he brought the Milwaukee Bucks with an older and less effective Glenn Robinson to the Eastern Conference Finals. And maybe that's somewhere where I see the difference between Ray Allen and Grant Hill, where even as a young player, I saw Ray Allen's success translate to playoff success more so than I saw it with Grant Hill. But I love Ray Allen. He's still one of the most watchable players. His explosiveness constantly gets underrated earlier in his career. I think that he's really an interesting player to go back and watch. If you go back and watch some of those Rashard Lewis Seattle Supersonics years, he's really, really strong player, really nuclear player, constant game winners. I think he's maybe top 5 clutch player. Discussion.
That shot repeated itself, and no matter what game condition it was, that shot repeated itself.
Yes.
And what an amazing free throw shooter.
Yes.
Probably one of the best ever you would see for a free throw. One difference I see with one thing that I think is fair to say about him is that as good as he was with Seattle and as good as he was before, he could have remained that good if he went to another team other than the Celtics, and that he subordinated himself for that championship.
Yes.
And that from that year forward, he took a hit on his numbers because he could have kept going at 25 a game if he went to the right team. So he was still that kind of a player where it wasn't like his skills diminished, and that's why he averaged less points. And I think that's going to keep him from being recognized maybe more than he is. And that 3-point it's going to go by the wayside so fast that you're not going to recognize, and that's really his claim to fame right now.
Well,
Unfortunately,
he was a pioneer in terms of that aspect, in terms
Yeah.
of a high-volume three-point shooter in the beginning of an era where we weren't seeing that many in terms of those that were leapfrogging into taking that many
the other
chances
thing he
from
did
three.
that was really strange is that he ended his career while he was still able to play.
Yeah, he
And-
could
and-
still-
and there was nothing wrong with him.
He could still be Kyle
You
Korver
know
right
who he
now.
would have been great with?
Tell me.
Last year with the Celtics. And,
Yes.
coming back, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean that guy, he wasn't out of amazing physical condition.
Yep.
Really kept himself fit to the max. Always was trim, always ready to play. I think he could have continued playing.
Yeah,
could have
and a
continued
lot
playing
of the most prevalent
But we
shooters.
do need to talk about the feud because I mean you probably don't want to, but I think it's sad that it is where it is, and that there was no Celtic player that called with congratulations for him. I looked at Paul Pierce's review of the Hall of Fame, and as much as Paul Pierce said he talked about the other three guys and not Ray Allen. He spent 5 minutes on each one of the other
Yeah.
three and
No,
zero
it's true.
minutes on Ray Allen.
It's true.
I mean, Doc Rivers sees that different. I think KG is wrong on this, and
No, I think he is
and I think Rondo's the wild card in this.
Well, I think Rondo's perception is so skewed by KG that it's kind of not even his own opinion.
Rondo's. He's not a solid mental guy. I mean, he wasn't with the Celtics in that terms. So I can't take his.
So I do think it's an interesting discussion to have when you're thinking about Ray Allen in terms of his feud with the Celtics. Obviously, we know how it worked. He left and joined the rival with Miami when the Celtics were still trying to make another run at it. And
Rondo just did the same thing.
Yes,
He's going to join LeBron. He's joined the same player that Allen joined.
And Ray Allen has every right to go wherever the heck he wants in free agency, especially after the Boston Celtics were rumored to be shopping him in trade offers.
They had just brought Jason Terry in, right?
Yes. They
So they were sticking that right in front of his face.
He was potentially questioned to be
might
coming.
six man.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's going to be Rondo's team.
He had
and
so
he had
many,
a conflict with Rondo.
Exactly.
Rondo's the type of guy you have conflicts with,
He
much
had
like Rondo.
so many reasons to feel slighted, to feel the necessary need to go to another team, and the responses.
Much less money.
And the responses from the Celtics players, I thought, were a little unnecessary and weren't provoked the manner that the reaction that they gave.
And part of what they're saying is that he didn't talk it over with
Yeah,
us.
he didn't talk to
call us. He didn't communicate this
Yeah.
at all.
But
there was only 1 year left in that
poor.
Celtics thing anyways.
Okay, so what's interesting about it is because that's obviously a buzz topic that happens no matter when you're talking to Ray Allen. You're probably going to ask Ray Allen about it because it continues, and we have it today.
Terry Garnett can fix that.
Yes, he is the one that can fix it, but it is the fault of the media. I wish everyone would let it die, and I think eventually KG would, even if it's 10 years down the road. Eventually he will.
He just had his
Eventually
opportunity.
he will.
All he had to do is congratulate Ray in the Hall of Fame. That's all he had to say.
Well, you see,
And Rondo
you see,
too.
you
Why
see-
wouldn't they
you-
just
when
do that?
When KG talks about that team, he looks back on it fondly. He doesn't talk about Ray in a negative light because if he's not prompted on it. And I think that Ray too frequently gets prompted about this Celtics team, and too frequently
book.
he feeds into it. Exactly.
Wait
with
till
the
KG
book.
writes his book.
Yeah, he feeds into it too frequently. He feeds into it. He's too
No,
willing.
I agree.
He's too willing to disperse blame.
He's a little sensitive.
Yes, he is. Everyone is too sensitive in this
Everybody
situation.
is. You're
It's
so
very
right about
annoying. Celtics fans are so convoluted in terms of what their feelings and emotions should be towards Ray Allen. I still adore Ray Allen for the player he was. He was one of my favorite players in the league before he came to the Celtics.
Okay.
And
Me too. Okay, but
I'm disappointed, but it's not necessarily at him. I think I'm just disappointed in the way that the feud has developed, and that's fine.
It's a real feud
Yes,
because,
yes.
Doc Rivers is saying he can't put it back together.
Right. Yeah. No. And you see the
And he
disappointment
wants to.
when Doc's disappointments. You can see the just the visible disappointment he has about it.
Yes.
And it's sad, but I can't do anything about it. And I think that the best thing that people in the media can do is just let it die. I respect
It's
Ray.
not gonna die.
I want to let it die.
Chet.
Even if it continues to live behind the scenes, I don't care.
2020.
Yeah. So what?
Kevin Garnett's going in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Year after next.
So
Ain't
what?
dying.
So what?
Ray Allen is going to reach out to Kevin Garnett, and Kevin Garnett is going to have an opportunity.
Okay, so we'll see.
So it's not going to die.
So we're going to see what happens. Every time an opportunity
Yep,
arises for it to feud, that's where I'll pay attention to it.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about it otherwise.
Okay.
I'm going to continue
But
to
that's a
respect
biggie.
Ray Allen for his career, for his
What will
contribution to the
KG
Celtics
do?
championship.
Will
And for
KG say, "Thanks, but no
those
thanks,"
two.
and a
It's
congrats?
those two. They need to talk about it. I don't care what Rondo has to say about it. His opinion is pretty irrelevant, if you ask me.
Okay.
I think it's just KG and Ray Allen. All right, let's just go to the last one. Who is it? Where is he? Jason Kidd. All right, so maybe, depending on how you feel about Steve Nash, probably the other most reputable player from this induction class. He played 18 seasons in the NBA. He played the most games out of all of these players. He averaged 13, 7, and 9 with 2 steals a game. Where he really differs from the other 3 players, I mean, you can say that Grant Hill was an above average defender, but where he differs is that he was really an elite level defender at the guard spot. He was a 10-time All-Star. He, similar to Nash, was also a 5-time assist champ.
And 5-time NBA first team.
Yes, he was a 6 All-NBA overall. He was a champion with the Dallas Mavericks, not in his prime, but a champion nonetheless with an important, crucial role-playing role. And he was 9-time All-NBA All-Defense. He was, we said it before, he shared the Rookie of the Year with Grant Hill. A second overall pick. His most notable years came with the New Jersey Nets, where he brought them to the finals in back-to-back years. Obviously, he fell short, and the East was a little weak, but you got to give credit where credit's due. He was the best player on those teams, and he's one of the most. Yes, he was one of the most interesting players to watch. He's one of the most dynamic players. I loved him on the Phoenix years, and even when he was pre-prime. It's so interesting that both him and Nash and Kidd had stints on Dallas with Nowitzki before they hit their prime. And it's funny when Nowitzki gave the props and the tip of the hat, and he was like, so congratulations on you both. Too bad neither one of you were in your prime when you played with me. But I love him. I think he's one of the best players to go back and watch as well.
He's got 2 sides of his personality that I see. He's got a real rough side of his personality that I think is important. But I look at what he did with the New Jersey Nets. They were the laughing stock of the NBA.
Yes.
And in this day and age, you could never do what Rod Thorne did. Rod Thorne took them after the domestic violence issue, where they had to get him out of town, and no general manager could have taken him in that situation in today's climate. But they took him, and from day one, Nash said, "We're making the playoffs," and everybody looked, "You kidding me?
Yeah.
You're the New Jersey Nets. You're the worst team in You're one of the worst teams to ever play." Yeah. And he kept saying it, They played their first, we went to their first practice, and the players started believing. Yeah. And he was able to, he had an energy and an ability to play that rose everybody up. And it was like, I played with a couple players like that, and when you're on with a court with them, all of a sudden, whoa! He's taking me there. He's taking me there, and he's not accepting any less than doing that. Paul Pierce talks about him in that 6-game series against the Celtics. He averaged 17, 12, and 11 in a 6-game series. Amazing stuff.
He's
Joe
incredible.
Dumas says, "I have never seen anyone faster than him with the ball."
Oh, he's remarkable.
That's with the ball, he's as fast as anybody that ever played the game. And like an elite defender. So that when you say what was his skills, he'll answer defense and passing.
Yes.
Elite passing. The bowling ball pass. I mean, he invented passes.
He has multiple 2-bounce highlight assists, which don't make any sense.
I think we touched a little bit on the downside of taking a play like that in today's age. He also had a DUI when he was coaching.
Yeah. He has demons.
And that's a long discussion, but I see it with a lot of what's going on in there, and maybe we'll have this one someday, and maybe we can gingerly talk on it. But I see it coming into other. I see it with Jalen Rose coming up. I see it with C. Webb. Why is C. Webb not in the Hall of Fame? Has it got anything to do with Michigan? Has it got anything to do with him making that play? Has it got anything to do with them stripping the banners away from Michigan because of their
I think if he had them, he would be there.
But so yes, but not with J. Kidd. I don't know why. I don't know why C. Webb is not in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's because with Jason, the trepidation with Kidd's issues is a lot off the court, and they don't reflect his accolades.
But look at today.
Yeah, but they don't.
Look at Jabari Bird.
No, I know. But they don't affect his basketball accolades that are judged on whether or not you get into the Basketball Hall of Fame. C. Webb's pitfalls affected his accolades in terms of what is judged and what matters and what doesn't matter for what you're let in.
If anyone has ever, one of the reasons I focus on this is that if anyone's ever overcome that, it's C. Webb.
Yes.
I mean, C. Webb from that time at Michigan, and I really think Jalen Rose, although I don't like some of the, I could get into other things about Jalen Rose, which would be part of this discussion, but we could take a whole show doing it. But I think even Juwan Howard, those guys have done themselves well, but nobody more than C. Webb. Yeah. And if I had to give an Academy Award for an athlete for a performance in a film this year, it goes to C. Webb with Uncle Drew. I don't know who else is performing out there, but I think he's He's got style.
Well, we
he's
can
got
we
class.
can touch more on him when we get to the
Yes,
future.
about futures.
But
Okay.
Jason
But Jason
Kidd,
Kidd.
to wrap that up, he's second all time in assists. He's second all time in steals. He's in the top 10 for 3-pointers made. And when you were touching on his ability to flip around a franchise that was picking perennially in the top of the draft, they had Kenyon Martin #1 overall in the
Who's
2000
injured.
draft. So the 2000-2001 season, they were sub 25 wins. He comes in 2001, 2002, and they win 52 games, and they immediately go to the finals. And it's remarkable. And his effect that he's in the game.
last time the Knicks, the Mavericks, and the Nets have won 50 games. The last time they won 50 games, Kidd has been their point guard.
Jason Kidd, yeah, I agree. And it's so interesting.
He also
I
was
explored
good from. He was the Mr. California basketball, the
Yes,
United States high school basketball player, first team All-America at Cal.
Right.
He's been good forever.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the second overall pick in the draft in '94. I just think for all of these guys, I went back and I looked at their playoff success when they were the best player on their team. Ray Allen gets a little skewed when he played with Miami and with whatchamacallit, and it makes his success look better than it was, no matter how he did affect those wins, obviously. But Steve Nash has a good resume, and Grant Hill, that's where he really lacked. And Ray Allen has an overall strong resume with Milwaukee and with Seattle. But when you look at Jason Kidd's resume in the playoffs, he made the playoffs like 13 years, and he was either the best player on his team unquestionably, or at the end of his tail off year with the Nets in 06-07, where you could say maybe Vince Carter, that's when he started to become a better player than him, that he was still helping them contribute into the second round of the playoffs. And his effect on winning is so much more prevalent than these other three guys. And he carried this intensity on both ends of the floor, and it just showed through. And even without the prominence of Vince Carter, when you see the prevalence of players that otherwise wouldn't matter and the success that they have on the court, it's so responsible because of what Jason Kidd put out there on the floor. And I think if I had to pick any single one of these four guys to have on my franchise, if I'm making a draft, I'm taking Jason Kidd. And I don't know whether that means he was better than Nash, because the MVPs have a lot to say about it in a more competitive MVP-laden era. But I think that Jason Kidd, overall, I'll take his contributions to basketball over any of these other three guys.
I like Nash's game in the sense that it's prettier to watch.
Yes.
It's smoother.
Yes.
He's a better shooter.
Yes.
So I like his game, but you cannot deny that if that guy's you want him on your team and not Jason Kidd.
Yes.
You want him on your team and not the other team.
And
if I had to play a game, I would take him
Yes.
and put Nash on
Yes.
the other team
Yes.
to win the game.
I think so.
And
The more and more I looked at the statistics, the advanced statistics, the counting stats, he really mirrors what the projections for Ben Simmons look like. The more I look into it, the more I'm seeing that, hey, this guy could literally be Ben Simmons. I'm just saying, that's what I'm seeing.
I don't think it does at all, because I mean,
Statistically, this is what I'm saying.
Maybe, but I mean, he became. I cannot envision Simmons ever becoming the three-point shooter that Jason Kidd is.
No one could envision Kidd becoming the three-point shooter.
He wasn't as far away as Simmons.
I agree. But I mean, maybe he can get there. All right, let's see if I get lucky with one of the last two segments. Nope. Let's go.
Go to future or current, future or whatever.
Current. All right, players that are in the NBA now, they're gonna lead
an easy one.
to the NBA. All right, I got a list of like 30 guys.
I know that's what's bad about this one.
Are you ready?
I'd rather do the who's going to be making it next year, but let's do this one.
I'm gonna rattle them off. You ready?
Go.
Tony Parker, Dwayne.
Oh! I know one guy you're not going to say. Go.
Tony-
And one thing I like about being off for a while is that we can get back into the old stuff. I mean, it's all right. It feels fresh to me now.
Okay.
Go.
Tony,
I know who you're not going to say.
Tony Parker, Dwayne Wade.
30 guys and you're not going to say them.
Tony Parker, Dwayne Wade, Kawhi Leonard, Dwight Howard, Vince Carter, Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, James Harden, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, Pau Gasol, and then I put Rondo in there with an asterisk, and then I have a list of like another 13 names that are, those are my I think they're definitely going to make it.
Crazy.
I think they're definitely going to make it.
lot of players.
And then I have another list of guys that I think could make it depending on what precedent for player entry is moving forward. So my list of maybes is Blake Griffin, Kevin Love, Al Jefferson, Jason Terry, Joakim Noah,
Al Jefferson.
J.J. Redick, Andre Iguodala, David West, Joe Johnson, Derrick Rose, Anthony Davis, Tyson Chandler, and LaMarcus Aldridge. And this is if the NBA ended today. With these players being
I just need
MVP.
to point out that you just said Andre Iguodala and Al Jefferson, and you did not say Draymond Green.
Yes, I did. Draymond Green was on my
good.
list of players
Okay,
that's
good,
going to make
good,
the Hall of
good.
Fame.
Thanks.
He's
Good.
going to make the
Okay.
Hall of Fame. I don't want him to. I don't think he
That's
deserves
30
it.
guys.
He's
I mean,
going to.
and it's, yeah. Good. I'm glad you said that because I thought you weren't even going to mention
No.
him. But that's quite a list, and I mean, we could narrow that down to.
Are there any names that you disagree with in that list that should make it?
I disagree. Al Jefferson's not making the
Well,
Hall of Fame.
he's in my maybes. He's in my maybes.
Okay,
He's in
okay.
my maybes.
No, I don't. I really don't. I think you've got those guys. Those guys they're on track. Some of them are already locks.
Yeah.
You could separate them. Steph and KD, and Westbrook and Dirk and D Wade and Melo and LeBron. And
What about Rondo? You think Rondo's in? Championship point guard?
no,
No.
not as is. He's gonna do more.
Does he?
He had some down years.
Does he
And-
make it over the other guards that I stated in my maybe section with Jason Terry, JJ Redick,
Yes.
Derrick Rose? He makes it over those guys? Because you got to consider
No,
a full
yeah.
basketball resume.
And
JJ Redick is one of the best college scorers of all time.
Yes,
So you got to
yes.
consider the whole
True,
resume.
true.
So
Yes,
it's
you do.
interesting.
So I think and you're probably right. I think Redick does make it over, and I think Rose probably makes it over Rondo. Rondo didn't have a college career really, to speak of. I don't think Rondo's done enough because other than that, if he stayed with it, and even at the end when the Celtics went down, he wasn't playing good enough. He wasn't playing Hall of Fame caliber ball with the Celtics, and he went to the Mavs, and he just started resurfacing last year with New Orleans.
Right.
We'll see. But maybe he can have a couple good years
now,
and win another championship or something.
If he finishes all time in the top 5 of assists and top 5 of steals, and he's a championship caliber player, what if he wins another?
got the one
What if he
championship.
wins another championship, piggybacking on a
That's
LeBron
enough,
team or
okay.
another team or something like
I
that?
can see the assists. I think he's one of the great assist guys in the
Yeah,
history of the
so
game.
I
That could
think
do it
he's
right
an
there.
interesting argument, and
But,
I do think that right around there is probably the line in terms of judgment of who's
Okay.
in and out.
What's
I think
his
he's
career
the
average
line.
for assists?
I think he's right around borderline 8. I think he's right below 8. I think he's like 7.9 or something like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
He might be a little higher, but he had a couple years where he averaged like 6.
It's a tough call.
I think it's interesting. What about the guys that I said probably not? Do you think Joe Johnson makes it into the Hall of Fame?
No.
I don't think he does either. All right. The people that are eligible next year, as well as the people that have been eligible. I'm just going to go over, again, another
You're going to go over who's going to
15 names. 15 names of people
Wow.
that could make it. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sean Marion, Chauncey Billups, Horace Grant,
It's a weak class.
Terry
next year.
Porter, Larry Nance,
God.
Detlef
Oh,
Schrempf,
God.
Bill Lambier,
Hall of Famers, huh?
Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace, Vlade Divac, Kevin Johnson,
Yes.
Mark Jackson,
No.
Chris Webber,
Yes.
Peja Stojakovic,
Maybe.
Sean Kemp,
No.
Tim Hardaway. You know Cedric
Run
Maxwell.
TMC.
Cedric Maxwell isn't in the Hall of Fame. I didn't know that. Why?
is in.
Why he's in?
I thought he is.
I thought he would be in too, but he was on this list.
Okay. All right.
Larry Johnson not in the Hall of Fame.
Wow, he's an awful good player.
I mean,
a lot better than some of the players you mentioned.
Well, these are just the people that are eligible. I only think like 7 of these guys are going to make it. I do think that Weber should be at the top of this list.
I think Robert, I like Kevin Johnson. I think Kevin Johnson. He had a short career. He only played 735 games, but he's one of only 5 guys in NBA history to average over 9 assists for his career.
Yeah,
and the others are Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson, John Stockton, and Detroit's Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, I went back and one of the games I watched at Grant Hill was against the Kevin Johnson Suns, and he was really good, explosive guard.
I think there's guys that aren't in that I think that I like a lot, and I think it's time for Jack Sikma to get in. I think Jack.
He's on my list. I don't know enough about him.
I watched him play. I think he's way beyond his stats in terms of how good a player he was. I think he's almost a Dave Collins caliber player.
Well, wasn't Dave Collins? He was really good.
Jack Sikma was really good.
Wasn't Sikma always like a second fiddle to the other?
Dennis Johnson.
Yeah, to Dennis Johnson, Seattle, and
but-
then when he played in Milwaukee, right, later in his career.
I don't
Or was
know
it
where he
earlier?
played late in his career. I'm thinking.
Well, it was Seattle and then Milwaukee. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. I remember watching a game here and there and just being extremely underwhelmed. I don't.
Game in and game out, he was one of the most
Again, I don't
steady
know much about him.
performers. I thought he was a great player, and that he's somebody that subordinated his stats to the team.
What was his best skill?
Trying to shooter.
Shooter.
Unbelievable shooter. I mean, a weird release,
Yeah.
but what an accurate shooter for a guy like that. But he was also an outstanding rebounder and a very good passer, so he had a good game. But he was a great shooter. Another guy that's I was looking at is Mark Aguirre. Mark
Aguirre.
Yeah, well, they said
number 1 overall pick.
I mean, he was averaging 28, 29 points a game, and he did things that like Carmelo Anthony wishes he would do. Is he went to Detroit and won 2 NBA championships by again bringing his game down and blending in after he was averaging 28, 29 points a game with Dallas. Had some problems with his team. They kind of flushed. They traded him for Adrian Dantley. And they traded him to Detroit, and they won 2 straight.
I think a lot of these players, because of the precedent set by some of the players that are already in the Hall of Fame, you're talking about guys that based on their accomplishments statistically and based off the accolades that they've got, whether it's championship rings or all NBA consideration or all-star appearances, these guys maybe deserve to get in. But when I go back and I watch these guys, I just don't think that they're a Hall of Fame caliber. I hear what you're saying in terms of maybe, he was a 25 plus per game scorer. He was a number 1 overall pick. He was a championship player who sacrificed his own statistics for the betterment of the team, where he was maybe the 3rd or 4th fiddle on that championship Bad Boys Pistons team, but he's still reputable and he was a very strong contributor. But when I'm going back and I'm watching these games with him, I'm underwhelmed. Again, if I'm moving forward and I'm starting a new Hall of Fame, he doesn't get in it. What about, let's transition that Pistons team to this new Pistons team, the 04-05 championship Pistons team.
With
if you had to pick one of those guys to make the Hall of Fame,
Rasheed Wallace,
Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, and Chauncey Billups, which one makes the Hall of Fame?
Really, that's pretty difficult. I don't like Jailblazers, and you know that. So I mean, so Rasheed's kind of pegged with me as much as other players like him. Ben Wallace only averaged 5.6 points a game. That's hard. I know he's Defensive Player of the Year a number of times. I would have to go with Chauncey Billups.
Okay. My stance is Ben Wallace. I think that he is
5.6 points a game. Is there anybody in the Hall of Fame that averaged 5.6 points a game?
I think it should be Ben Wallace. I think that he's
what an amazing rebounder.
He's one of the most tenacious rebounders and defenders. He's very similar as a Rodman-esque player.
True.
I think he had stretches in his career where he was maybe even more dominant.
He could play the 5, and Rodman could not play the 5. And Wallace had about 6'9", could play the 5.
He owned Shaq's and stretches of games that they played, and he was one of very few big men in the league that you can say that about. I love him.
You may sway me with that one. I think I may pick him with Chauncey Billups.
Okay, what about Mark Jackson? I was surprised that he's not in.
Yeah. I'm not.
You're underwhelmed?
Well, yeah, I don't think. Yeah, he's a great player. He's a really good player.
It's so interesting.
I like Mitch Redmond rather than him.
And he's like really low.
Whatever that was there with him and with Mullen and Mark Jackson. Modular, there's old guys like Lou Hudson from the Atlanta. Sweet Lou, you don't even know Lou Hudson.
I know Lou.
But what an amazing shooter, and back in that era. And I think you're still fighting, and again, topic for another show. And I've kind of gone back into this and revisited this quite a bit. Is that the talk about the way you look at that generation of players, and your response to Wilt Chamberlain to me was. And it wasn't even me that was contacting. It was James that was contacting at that time. It was his 82nd birthday. You equated Dwight Howard as better than him. I mean, I can't even buy it. If you were a great athlete, no matter when you were a great athlete, you were a great athlete. Period.
Yeah, I agree.
And so those guys were great athletes. They were great basketball players, and they were great athletes. And that translates, and you're not doing that. It was just Ted Williams' 100th birthday. Ted Williams translates.
Yeah, because baseball is so much more translatable.
Why?
Because the advancements in athleticism, training, and skill positions are so much less drastic between baseball then and baseball now than it is basketball then and basketball now. And it's so obvious. And I agree.
Hitting a 100-mile-an-hour fastball is difficult then, it's difficult now.
Yes, I agree. But they could do it now and they can do it then. And the positional advancements haven't changed that much.
You're a great athlete.
Yes, I agree. And Wilt Chamberlain was a great athlete. But you know who wasn't a great athlete? The people that were playing around Wilt Chamberlain. And that's always been my argument. But if we're going to these,
and we'll have that.
We're going back to these guys. I'm thinking some borderline people. Someone that's interesting that you keep saying with the run TMC. Tim Hardaway. I was again another surprise. I was surprised that Mullen and Richmond are in the Hall of Fame and he's not. Right. He had playoff success with the Heat afterwards with Alonzo Mourning. I think he's one of the stronger point guards. I remember he's one of my brother's favorite players growing up. So I have good exposure to him. I thought he was deserving of a Hall of Fame. A lot of these names, just based off the players that I know that are already in, I'm just shocked to find that they aren't in as well.
True. When you look at who's already in, and somehow they slip by them. I got I don't know how we're running out of time here, but I got two that I would like to throw out there. That one's a coach, and I think it's time that Bill Fitch gets into the Hall of Fame. Bill Fitch's run with the Boston Celtics, he won 74% of his games. The greatest team that I ever watched play, other than Bill Walton, and you agree with me, Bill Walton 78 Trailblazers, is that 80-81 Larry Bird championship team. That's the second greatest team I ever watched play. Bill Fitch, and those 4 years until he wore out his welcome, he won over 950 games. He was a coach forever. He went 17-65 2 of his last 4 years with the Los Angeles Clippers because he just wanted to keep coaching. The other one is, I think, the best women's player I ever saw play, and to this day, and is not in the Hall of Fame, and she's kind of gone by the wayside because of when she was there, is Medina Dixon from Cambridge, Ringen Latin, went to Old Dominion, won a national championship, was an Olympic medalist, and played in the same high school at the same time with Patrick Ewing. I used to go watch them both play. Medina Dixon played the first game, and Patrick Ewing played the second game. The greatest women's player that I ever saw, and she's not in the Hall of Fame.
Some interesting. So the way that
6'3" and could handle.
Basketball Reference has an algorithm that they compute in terms of Hall of Fame probability, and it has a lot to do with advanced stats, with win shares added for your career in terms of how many wins individually you created for your teams that you were a part of. And something that I thought was interesting was they had Buck Williams near towards the high of that list. And he's a player that I was looking at the other names I thought that I know very little about. So can you give me some strengths about Buck Williams?
A good strong rebounder, a big that could play defensively, a hard player, but he's a marginal player.
Not a Hall of Famer.
I'm not
a Hall of
Famer.
Hall
of Famer. I mean, it's a guy I'd like to have him on my team because he's a very physically fit, can run the floor, can rebound, about 6'10". Definitely a good player. Better than Nance.
Yes, I agree. All right, so let's end the discussion with Chris Webber. I think that even without his banners in his Final Four appearances, which were stripped because of reasons.
Association with the agents.
So even without those, I think he has the credibility in terms of the play style that he had. His reputation as probably a top 5 passing big man of all time, right around the 4 or 5 in that tier for me. And his just dominance in his ability to bring that Sacramento team to perennial playoff discussion. We had similar to the Suns team where we saw a sideline issue where that really stripped their chances of winning a finals. With that Robert Horry and that shot against the Kings in Game 6 of that series with the Lakers, that really hurt his legacy, I think, because that was another one where if they went that year, I think they had a shot to win the finals that year. I think that he absolutely has the accolades and the statistics that align with a Hall of Famer. He is probably the first player that comes up in the majority of discussions for players that aren't in that deserve to be in.
So it's why not? And you look at that Fab Five team, that is one of the greatest collection of college players to ever play. And C. Webb was the best player on that team. And he made Sacramento that team. He's the one. He brought a lot in terms of personality and that just dominated the scene in a lot of ways, like Jason Kidd. He just brought a lot to the team, in addition to his ability. He was a below average defender. He was a below average defender. It really depends. But that's okay because there's a lot of guys that and you say below average, I'll go average. Okay, which is fine. Yeah, he's somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to go below average. And something that often gets forgotten is as his career continued, he was able to adjust his game to continue to be dependable in different manners as a role player. He won a championship with that Pistons team, and he was a very strong role player for them off the bench, and started some games that where Ben Wallace and Rasheed Wallace were hurt. And he helped them win a lot of games. And I think that his full resume, not even considering the Fab Five, which needs to be, I don't understand. I think stripping titles because of off-the-court issues is pretty silly. You can put an asterisk against it. Who cares? Just say like these titles aren't as legitimate because of allegations against agents paying. But you got to give them that accolade that they fought for. They won those games. These games happened. You can't make someone forget because of allegations and issues that happened off the court. And it's such an unusual line to walk, and it is clearly affecting a player's ability to get recognized in a manner he deserves to be recognized in, because he is a Hall of Fame player, and I think if he wasn't stripped of those
banners, those final 4 banners, I think he would have already been in, because we know it's
I think
a
that's
complete.
sad, because I think he's redeemed himself completely from that. Whatever taint that was, I think he's gone way beyond that.
And we saw him do some good
And
acting.
he continues. Yeah, I really do. I thought he was great.
All right, that wraps up all the topics. We got to everything we were going to say. Maybe we'll have a trade before the 2-week breakdown before a training camp happens. We'll let you know if anything happens. See you guys next week. My Wheelhouse. Out of here.
Wheel is turning and you can't slow down.